thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited to host this virtual panel discussion today around the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime. Feel free, drop where you're viewing us from below so we know where you're watching and tuning into. That's one of the great things about the virtual world. We are coming to you from Knoxville, the native lands of the Yuchi, Muskogee Creek, and Cherokee Nations. And just for reference, I am a white female in my mid-30s with long brown hair and a blue top, sitting in my office here at the Clarence Brown Theater. And with that, I would love to go ahead and turn it over to our lovely panelists who we have with us today to go ahead and introduce themselves. And Carey, why don't we go ahead and kick it off with you?
Hello, my name is Carey Menefee. I work for United Healthcare in behavioral health, and I also am a mother of a person on the spectrum, an adult actually. I have dark hair. I'm in my 40s. I'm sitting in my comfy living room with a fire on, and I use the pronouns he and she and her. Excuse me.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Blondin. I am a psychologist here at UT through the Class Center, which is the Corn Learning Assessment and Social Skills Center. I do a lot of work with adults and children on the autism spectrum, as well as other referrals and community members. And I train graduate students as well. And so just to give you some background, so I have medium brown hair. I'm sitting in my office, white female, she, her pronouns.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christian Rice. I am from the Future Program. I am a white male. Pronouns him, his. I'm in office background, and yeah.
Great, thanks, Christian.
Hello, my name is River Mutsu. I'm a fair-toned person with living in the white background here in the house. There's my female overlord's climbing contraption behind me. I'm wearing a shirt. I'm in my mid-30s. I'm wearing a shirt that says "Be Nice Human" with some rainbows below it. And I'm back towards working long towards toward a PhD in philosophy or anthropology at UTK.
That's awesome. Well, welcome. We are so excited to have you all with us. So I guess, we wanted to kind of just dive right in and just kind of start off with River and Christian. I'd love to start with you guys first to just kind of get your overall reactions to the piece of seeing Curious Incident. What were some things that jumped out to you while you went ahead and watched the show? Christian, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. What struck me most interesting to the show was mainly how relatable it was. It was a lot more like some parts more hit home more than others, but it was overall just like there's like points where they talk a lot about education, and they talk a lot about how this guy is going through the world of autism, and he's experienced the world for his eyes. It really hit me home. So, yeah.
That's great. Was there, and I guess, River, we can go ahead and jump into your reaction as well. Was there any moment or piece of the production that really resonated with you?
I mean, so many parts did. I think one of the immediately from the beginning, it was emotionally hard hitting. Was how this Christian is. He's not handling physical, interactions very well at all, and you back people up against the wall, and people become upset at how you react. If you're trapped in a corner, trapped in a cage, you're going to have a certain reaction, and you don't want that reaction, but nonetheless, it is your reaction. And most of the world doesn't don't expect that. And so that was one of the biggest things is seeing the internal process of how that's so I'm losing my words, but it's night and day in terms of what expectations versus what your reality is.
Yeah. And I know, we also both chatted a little bit before this too. And Christian, I know you mentioned a little bit about the education component and advocacy. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Mainly because what hit home with me is with education, you see him advocating for Christopher, and you see that a lot. But the thing is that in the education part, my parents personally really advocated for me through education. So to see that in the play, that really hit me in a way that I thought that was really cool. And in education, there's a more important thing to do here because, of course, I'm at UT, but later on in the show, when he talked about how, hey, I'm probably going to go to college, that got me emotional because that's how I felt when I got accepted to UT. So it was just overall very interesting, and I really loved the education part of them talking about, I'll pay for this if it's education means for my son. You know what I mean? It's really cool.
Yeah, I absolutely understand. I know. I thought that was a great moment and just, yeah, really wonderful. Carolyn and Dr. Blondin, I'd love to come to you too and get your reactions on what, if there was anything, that jumped out to you with this particular piece.
Sure. Well, let me give a little background. So I read the book early on after my undergrad years, so before grad school and before really knowing a lot about autism, and then rereading it with some of the background that I have collected, or a lot of the background that I've collected. I reread it just within the past month, and then seeing it was just so, the play does a really great job just showcasing the book. And I felt like everything that I loved about the story was presented well in the play. And, as a psychologist, I am certainly very mindful of how autism is portrayed in film and in the theater and books. And I really enjoyed this portrayal, and I feel like they hit on a lot of different areas of how someone on the spectrum might experience the world.
That's great. Thank you. I'm glad that that we're able to capture some of that. And Carey, I'd like to come to you next, if that's all right. And I'm also going to throw in, we had a video question come in that I think will also kind of tie in, but we'd love to throw this video question your way. And also then if you would like to talk about kind of what hit home with you seeing this production, that would be wonderful. So we're going to go ahead and play this next video.
So I really felt for the parents in this production. While they made mistakes, I really felt like the character's performance was really nuanced. And I wanted to know your all's take on this performance, especially the level of compromise that it might take to be a parent of a child with autism.
That's an insightful question. What my first thought is, when you have a baby, you take them to all the pediatrician milestones, right? And you see, okay, they can make this milestone, they can make this milestone, they can make this milestone. And when you realize you have a child who's going to reach milestones differently, there's a little part of mourning that happens, for that normalcy going out the window. And then you just put your big girl pants on and realize, hey, this special person has been gifted to me to raise. So let's get on with it and become the advocate that we are. But another part of it, when she mentioned the parents making poor choices, I did everything I could to make right choices. And of course, I still made poor choices. And I beat myself up for that. And then I just had to learn to give myself grace to say, there's no playbook with any child, much less a child that you do have to make compromises with, a child that you do have to high five instead of hug, or a child that you do have to endure those fits that you might otherwise not take so lightly with another child. So there is compromise, there is forgiveness, and there is a part where you just have to come to a place of realization of, okay, this is going to be a different journey for us. And I really, as far as the play went, was so happy to see the positive outcome. So happy that he was talking about school, so happy that he did well in his math class. Those accomplishments matter. I know with my son, just like language matters, saying that we have a child on the spectrum, not, a autistic child. I never liked the word disability. And when my son was graduating high school, we went to Voc Rehab, and they were going to help him find work, and mentor him and teach him how to drive. And the lady said, so what, is your disability, to my son? And my son looked at her blankly, and she said, I mean, what's your disability, that you're here for? And he said, I don't have a disability. I have challenges. And I was so proud in that moment, because that really does matter. And I felt like the play did a really great job of being positive.
That's great. Yeah, I do like how hopefully everybody has seen it, but if not, I don't want to give too much away, but it didn't necessarily tie with perfectly wrapped Hollywood bow ending, but still I think leaves on a message of hope, which is so much more encouraging and real. So I would also really love to go ahead and hear, we have some special guests that we've had submit videos for this on our design and projections designer. So I'd love to go ahead and play this clip for you all, and then get some reactions afterwards.
Joe Payne. I teach sound and projection design for UT. I am the sound designer and composer for this production of Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. As a sound designer, I like to make a space feel like a memory of a space. So, when somebody walks down the street, if you took a recorder, an audio recorder, your phone, or just to capture some video, you'd get just noises and wind and cars passing and just noise after noise after noise. And if you're playing on TikTok, you see that people are trying to get good recordings and just get lots of just extra stuff. So what I like to do is kind of distill that down to what we imagine a space sounds like when we are remembering that space. So if I walk down the street, what do I imagine is in that street? I hear a couple birds. I hear one car pass. I hear the crosswalk. And I emphasize those moments to give us sort of key locations to help us go, he's on a street. Instead of just a bunch of confusing noise. Now, this is what's interesting about this play. This play is about a neurodivergent person that can't filter out some of that noise. And so unlike most plays that I design, this play, I actually want the noise in, and I want the senses to be overloaded. And so, one of our big exciting moments is in a train station where he is just overwhelmed, and he's overwhelmed because he can't filter out the PA announcement and the train sound and the commercial that's going on a TV in the corner. And so I want to give all of those the same equal value of volume, which I normally wouldn't do. Normally I'd filter that out for the viewer, but now I want to make it overwhelming.
Hi, I'm Tate Thompson. I am the second year MFA Sound and Media student, and I am the projection designer for The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. So at the beginning of the play, we start with a smaller palette of images, and then as we build into this hero's journey, and as we get into that train station, we make the images bigger, and we build and to get to that overwhelming sensory experience.
And you're doing it a lot with overlaying imagery. So it starts out as small and simple, and then it gets bigger and bigger in the space, but also lots more layers of stuff. So as the composer for The Curious Incident, I centered on a few themes. One is the murder mystery. I centered on the memories, and most of the memories are about his mother, and then the hero's journey. And those particular themes are quite different. And so the murder mystery and the general sort of transitional sounds and music of the piece, I wanted to be sort of mathematical in quality, because Christopher loves math, and then the memory music I wanted to be sort of legato and full strings and lush and slow. And then the hero's journey is just active and exciting. And it turns out that some of the hero's journey music I wrote, and some of it I found because I found stuff that was just better than I could write. And as a sound designer, you do that all the time. And what I did is I chose music that is similar to what I wrote in orchestration and style, so that it could be unified as a whole.
So, that's a little clip of how we actually got to, some of the world of which we portrayed on this stage. Carey, I'd be interested to hear, what did you all think about that? Did it resonate? Did you notice those things? What were your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, I recognized it, and I recognized it because it was overwhelming noise, like he said he did on purpose, and I just had a moment of empathy for my son, because I know that he lives in that space, and I know that tactile speaking, it's the same way, and his little ticks I just love because they're so ritualistic, and that's not only my son, but working in behavioral health, what I see as well. And so I appreciated them keeping it true to what people experience, so that we can have a glimpse into that world.
That's great. Well, we did have an audience question come in as well, kind of relating to sound and design. So I'd love to go ahead and play that clip as well. And then we can kind of continue on this discussion.
I've seen a few productions of Curious Incident in the past, and one of the sections that I find particularly interesting is the journey section, especially as he's making his way to London. I'm actually on my way to London right now, believe it or not. And so one of the areas that I would be really interested to learn more about is how the sound and projection design and lighting design contributed to Christopher's story. Do you feel that the use of that imagery reflects your own experience? Do you feel that the vibrancy is more or less than what you might experience on a day-to-day basis? Or was it overly theatrical? Would love to know your thoughts. Thanks.
Hey, well, I feel like this question is predominantly directed more towards Christian and Riv. I'm going to go alphabetical. Christian, let's go ahead and start with you, and then I will turn it back over to Riv to comment on it as well.
Okay, so about his question, I think that you see Christopher getting overstimulated by all the effects going on, and you see him like clearly breaking down at points. And that was kind of a good way of going about how a kid of autism or whatever would be like in like that situation about someone being with him. So if you think about it, if he's overstimulated, that works perfectly as portrayed by Christopher in the play. It was really good. It was really interesting to see how much the sound effects changed who he was at certain points. It was really interesting. And overall, I think being that kind of person in that area is really hard to accomplish on a film. So I think that's really good that the way they did that.
That's great. And so, so in your opinion, Christian, did it feel more theatrical, or maybe maybe right on par, or underplayed? How did you feel?
Very theatrical. I think that
Yeah.
was really realistic the way they were going about it.
Awesome. That's great. And Riv, I might pause one moment before we come to you, because I actually, I'd love to. We also have our main lead performer who had, we have a video clip, and I think I'd like to save your reaction for that, if that's all right. So if we can go ahead and play that video clip, that would be awesome.
Like for every actor, that's just a thing that you kind of go, I hope this sounds right. I hope this is good. It sounds good in my head. My name is Jason Edward Cook. I'm playing Christopher in The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. When they called me to audition, I was like, ooh, this is going to be quite an undertaking, because you don't really know what you're doing. You want to honor the character. So when I had to audition for this, I kind of just had to go with whatever came organically. And weirdly enough, when I was working on the script, I started pulling out the pockets of my pants and feeling the texture between my fingers. And it started kind of focusing me and centering me and actually grounding me in the character. So then the text started coming out organically as well. And then we come here and, you know, you can plan what you want to plan as far as physicality, but I didn't want to do that so much. And I started getting a little bigger in rehearsals and started trying to play a little more extreme, really using my hands, pushing things away. And I was so lucky enough to have John, our director, who was an amazing outside eye, reel me back in. Keep it contained, keep it closed, keep it tense, and kind of keep it like a ticking time bomb that's not going to explode, but could at any moment. It's incredibly strange to not look at your fellow actors when you're doing a scene with them. I mean, I told them all as we started getting up and on our feet. I was like, this is so weird, I can't connect with you. But not having that connection was so helpful. It was almost as if the actors that I was playing opposite caught my eye, felt more connected to me, and so the scenes started to shift, whether when I was choosing to look at them, when I wasn't. I find that in the show, when I see my mother, I'm more apt to look her directly in the eyes. There's a softness about their relationship. With my father, there's more of a working relationship, a buddy relationship. This plus this equals this. I can rely on him, but it's not super emotional like it is with my mother. So there is a little bit of a distance there. Siobhan is kind of like that pushing force. Go do what you want. Go do what you think. Let your brain soar. Whereas Dad is more of the logical source. You can't do this. You shouldn't be doing this. This is right. This is wrong. I want to keep you safe. Now, Siobhan wants to keep him safe too, but she also wants him to have a wonderful, all-encompassing adult life. So she's trying to set him up with not having to constantly edit himself for fear of what other people might think. And that is invaluable to someone who's neurodivergent, to have someone like that in their life.
So I love that Jason gives us a little bit of an inside look into his process of portraying Christopher. Riv, I'd love to bring you up for this one and just kind of hear your thoughts about the video, but maybe also his portrayal of Christopher and your own experience. So I'd love to hear your reaction to that.
Oh, right. So some things that jumped out was that, I mean, certainly everyone has different personalities, and, you know, the state, what's often portrayed sometimes as people are, you know, like savants, for instance, right? Much more the case in like Raymond Babbitt as Dustin Hoffman's portrayal in Rain Man comes to mind, or, you know, the faces that were on the chalkboard that remind me of Ben Affleck's portrayal in The Accountant, which is actually a very cathartic movie. I watch it often. It's, you know, and then you have people like Daniel Tammet, who has Asperger's, but also synesthesia. So, and so we have different portrayals. So when he's bringing out the character, he's bringing out one common, you see traits of, you know, aversion to eye contact, heightened sensitivity to auditory and physical sensation, and a particular obsession and focus, task, or mindset on things. And all these things come out in different interactions. And in this case, Jason's portrayal of Christopher hit a lot of keys along the medley that is very common. I think I see that is identified within the greater, ASD community. And there's all kinds of online forums and so on. A lot of things overlap. That there's a common thing that all cats have Asperger's. It's in terms of behavior. The relationship with the parents, it's anecdotal, but it's also very common too. With how a lot of the times how our neurology works out in development towards this direction or that direction. A lot of overlap. It's not exclusive, but you will have the nurturing side, and you also have the more structured protection side, and those kind of come out. That relationship is there. I see very often. There's a lot of thoughts on it. Eye contact was the biggest thing. It's eye contact is just the worst in person. But you got to survive in a world that expects you to have eye contact. It's very frustrating to juggle.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's really great. And, and there's ways too, right? Like that we're having these conversations that we can help us become more aware and realize like eye contact might not be a big deal. Like we shouldn't expect that all the time. Yeah. So I have another video question that we'd like to play. And after this video question, Carolyn, I think this is the one I'm going to ask you to respond to. So if we can go ahead and pull up that video question, that would be great.
Just got back from the show and loved Jason's performance as Christopher. I've heard autism is on a spectrum, so every individual experience is different. Which elements of Christopher's experience, such as his aversion to physical touch or his encyclopedic-like knowledge of space, would you say are pretty common, and which would you say are more specific to his individual circumstances?
Okay. Well, that was an excellent question from Danielle. And this Riv has kind of touched upon some of this as well. So I'm going to piggyback on some of the things he said and some of the things that Danielle said. So autism is definitely very much on a spectrum. And I've heard, and I'm going to butcher the phrase, but like if you meet one person with autism, that's it. You meet one person with autism, because there is a lot of differences in how symptoms may present and how people might perceive certain challenges and what may be challenging for them. So that being said, Christopher is he's a very believable character of someone that would be on the autism spectrum. Some things that resonated that I would see as being pretty common, some of those general areas is challenges with the communication, describing both what he needs and he wants and his thoughts. He was pretty literal in his interpretation of what others said and how he described things. And I see that a lot in my work with individuals on the autism spectrum. And certainly the sensory overload and how well they represented that to someone that is not on the spectrum, what that could feel like. So some of the areas that may not be as typical, and Riv talked about this as well, so thank you, Riv. But part of this is that not everyone has a area of very intense specialty or savant, but you are going to meet people on the spectrum and not, who are excellent in math. And so that was one thing that stood out. And just for everyone to remember that, like, if you meet someone on the autism spectrum, they may not have like a super wonderful talent. As far as like a savant, everyone's talented and everyone has their strengths and challenges. And so that I also noted that Christopher, he was showing some anxiety and some phobias that may co-live with anxiety, but may not always be part of that. So for example, he had definite phobias related to colors. And so if he saw a red car and maybe watching red car was a good day, yellow was a bad day, I think. So I don't see that as being very common, although anxiety can be shown in different ways with people on the autism spectrum.
That's great. Yeah. And I love how you both were able to kind of address that question. That was wonderful. And I do love that saying, right? If you've met one person on the autism spectrum, that's just one person. And I think that's just such a great reminder, though, too, that, we're all unique individuals, right? That's what makes the world such a great place is, we're not all the same. And so I just love that. So we did have a live question come in off of our YouTube channel that I'd love to go ahead and read out loud and see if who would like to go ahead and respond to it. But Amanda asked, do you think this play will help people understand those who have developmental disabilities or challenges any better? And what do you all think? As much as, this play, I think, is potentially about somebody on the spectrum, I think it's also a play intended a lot, I think, for all of us too, or for atypical people as well. Who would like to go ahead and respond to that? Carey, I think I'd love to bring it back around to you if you would. If you like
I guess I was nodding my head. Yes, I absolutely think that. I absolutely think that it can help and be helpful. I even thought that people in the play were learning how to help, like the officer in the train station when he came and he was like, well, you need a ticket, and how much money is that? And then he helped him through that. People learn how to help others in all kinds of situations every day. And I think this play would be so beneficial for that. We have what is called peer support centers across the state of Tennessee. And it's when someone identifies as a lived experience with a mental health diagnosis or on the spectrum of autism. And basically what it is day programs that you go to and you stay all day and you do things like go see plays and do things in the community. And that was one of my first thoughts when I saw it. I thought, oh my gosh, this would be so great for peer centers. This would be great for students who are in the counseling or social work programs. So there was not one thing that happened in the play that offended me. And I can get offended, pretty easy when it comes to my kid. So not one thing offended me. And so I love the fact that something could be shown in such a positive light to other people who are wanting to understand more.
That's great. Carolyn, did you want to piggyback off of that too and share?
Sure. And so I don't know if this is because I'm in the field or because there does seem to be a movement out there. And I'm hoping it's the latter, that we as a society are becoming more inclusive and more aware. And there's that push out there for us to understand and accept that there isn't like one way to be or one thing to do. And the more stories, I think, and especially if they're accurate and non-offensive, right? So just like Carey said, because there are some things, that can make me like, that's not going to help. But I think the more stories that we have where we're showing this perspective, in theater, in books, in movies, in TV, I think that's the better. I think that's going to make it where people, it's becoming more common knowledge and understanding where people may see this and say like, okay, so this is maybe how families may like take the family's perspective and then take someone that's on the spectrum's perspective and caregivers. And so I think that that's all good. So I want to see more of it.
That's great. Yeah. And Riv, can I go ahead and ask you to share your thoughts on this as well? What did you think?
Right. So I guess I have a quick thought, and that is, and it speaks more to the method of expanding empathy as almost kind of a panacea, if that's not too bold to claim, to address a lot of our problems. And when you see a play, right? Say you see a classical Shakespearean play, or even going back to the Greek tragedies, or a modern play, Paul Shapiro, a modern operaist comes to mind, steampunk series, etc. You have all these, but they're always a performance. There's kind of like an expectation of where everyone's at. You're just watching for entertainment. In this case, it kind of forces you, especially when Jason Christopher speaks to the audience. There's these things that pull the audience in and say, consider it from my perspective, just for a moment, and it peppers this throughout. I think it's a very effective vehicle for expanding empathy. And when you expand empathy, suddenly you care about people. When you care about people, you're more likely to try to help. And it's a win-win for everyone. So that's really nice.
I love that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, it truly, I think, we all aspire in the theater to increase a sense of empathy within our community. And so I just think that's wonderful. And kind of piggybacking right off of that, right? So with this maybe increased awareness and sense of empathy and wanting to help and change, what is something that neurotypical people might be able to do to help to start to make their spaces or their interactions more welcoming for folks who may be on the spectrum? What's something or like actions that would help, if you're inviting somebody over to dinner, or you're at school, or you're, I know we've taken some steps at the theater, but what are ways that we can help welcome and make it a more safe and inviting environment?
Well, I'm as Southern
Yeah.
as they come, and so I hug. I go for the hug every time, and I've had to teach myself through years of training, to ask for that hug to see if that's okay.
That's great. I'm with you, and actually, I think the pandemic has kind of taught me to pause a little bit of a moment first now too, unfortunately. But yeah. Christian, did you have any thoughts around that as well?
I think you guys covered it pretty well.
Yeah. Awesome. Carolyn or Riv?
Yeah, so I work on, guiding professors and other professionals out there, and as far as steps to increase awareness and work with individuals on the autism spectrum. And I think a big part of that is understanding your bias and maybe your stereotype with the diagnosis, and kind of learning more about what that all could be covered. I think that would be helpful. And then just considering how you're communicating things in ways that may benefit not just folks on the autism spectrum if you're teaching them or if you are their boss, but other folks as well. So I think a lot of people would really like, if given directions, to give some very specific breakdowns of that, or having something that like, okay, and I just went ahead and wrote this down, and so providing some added accommodation for that for all. So I'm all about that universal design of accommodation, meaning that we're providing extra assistance for anyone who needs it. I think doing that from like your boss or your professor point of view those are good steps.
That's great. Yeah, Riv, did you want to jump in off of this?
You just wanted to add that there's something really important there about giving very precise details, because a lot of the things are kind of understood, and of course everyone's different. One person is one person. We develop over time. I've developed over time. I'm sure Christian has developed over time. Anyone, a kind of indexical knowledge, an unnative knowledge towards what this means, what this reference, and and the cultural milieu of it all, and parlance. But what stood out was definitely give explicit directions whenever to be considerate of that isn't always going to be just assumed. And then the two biggest things is don't demand eye contact and assume that we're not listening, because we probably are listening hyper intentively, even if we don't want to. The filter problem. So don't assume eye contact doesn't mean not listening. And the second thing is be aware of audio levels. I think that's the three biggest things. And you have a lot better connections that way.
Yeah. Riv, your comment about eye contact reminded me of this podcast that I was listening to at one point where, and it was, how we can better take perspective. And part of it was thinking about how have we gotten used to our lives on Zoom, and how, we've had to kind of learn certain things and that we probably don't get it right. So like, I never know where to look in, the camera, or, if I start becoming more conscious of my little thumbnail picture, that can throw me off. And so being aware of some of that kind of just awkwardness and uncertainty and it's probably not exactly the same as what someone might experience on the autism spectrum, but it does give here are some of these extra layers that someone might have to work through to communicate. So I think kind of getting that perspective and understanding, hey, just because something's easy for you, that may not be the case for everyone else. So patience and flexibility and curiosity are all things that will be, I think, successful when interacting with others.
That's so true. And I mean, just as a broad general too, right? Like that, yeah. This is so wonderful to have you all here and on the panel and getting to talk about this play. I'm very excited about it. We are looking to wrap up, but I did want to ask one final question. And I think, Dr. Blondin, your comment kind of led into that is, I do think that while this play is about showcasing different perspectives, right, and being aware of others' perspectives, it's also, there were moments to me throughout of great similarity too, right, of demonstrating how we're all human, how we all have, those maybe breaking points or melting points, or, and so I wasn't sure if there was any moment or in the play that spoke to you about this commonality that you saw that you were like, yes. And so I just wanted to bring that up too, to see if anybody noticed moments that really jumped out to them about something that was unifying. Christian, you look like you want to
go Christian.
Oh, sorry. Well, what stood out to me about that standpoint was the fact that he, like I said before, at the end, he went on about this whole idea of college, and really, people are people. I mean, that's just how it is with the disabilities and people with autism. You never know what the person's going to want. Each of us have our own quirks. I like to call it quirks, better disabilities. That's just a little context. But everyone has their quirks. And so basically, with everything that they do in education-wise or in life in general, people should learn who they are, and not where oh, this person has a disability, this person does not. Let's hang out with this person, not this person. That's not okay. So I think it's more important to say, let's learn this guy's quirks. Let's learn what he's doing. Who is he about? Who is he? And then that will kind of help with everything.
Yeah, I love that. Also in the theater, we're always excited. I'm going to take that and use it. Quirks. I love it. Awesome. And Carey, right before we wrap up, was there something else that you wanted to jump in with that?
I just wanted to jump in when it was about his mother, being comforted by his mother when he finally saw her. That's such a universal feeling, Yeah.
As a mom of a two-year-old, I was just, a new mom and just enjoying that feeling and reconnection. I could only imagine. Definitely cheered me up. Well, if you haven't seen the show yet, it's running. This is the last week. Make sure you get your tickets. It really is one of my personal favorites. And I hope, even if you've seen it, come see it again. I think, having this panel, this is one thing that I really love about a great piece of art and theater is that it can help foster conversations in our community and make us more aware. I also love how we can bring various people together, right? And each person will see a new perspective of each aspect of the play. So that's, I think, one of the great things about a piece of theater and art. And I just want to thank the panelists so much for their time and being able to come on and discuss all of this. It's been a true pleasure. And I hope we can bring you all back too, because I've just gotten to enjoy and loved working with you all and conversing. So thank you all so much. Feel free, if you're watching this, to show them some love in the chat section too, because I know they deserve it all.
Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all so much again.
Go see it.
Yeah.